What is such a joy to speak with you. Thank you for making time for us for Madrigalia.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure, Brenda. Thank you. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you too. One of the pieces that we loved singing in our Songs of the Soul concert was your setting of Psalm 23. How did that come into being?
Yeah, so that piece has quite a story to it. I wrote it for the funeral of a dear friend of mine who died quite young of cancer. This was from the first congregation where I was cantor, and then I grew very close to this family. And then after I'd left the congregation, she got sick and then passed away at age 42, I believe. And her husband asked if I could sing at her funeral, and I just decided to write something and wrote this Psalm 23 kind of just like over, just very quickly as an a cappella song in for her funeral and sang it there. And then as I sang it a few more times, I realized that people seemed to really connect to it. So I decided to make a piano accompaniment to it, and then began to sing it, as an art song, and then was commissioned by the Boston Zamir Chorale to write this choral version that you sang. And so then, as it was published in that version, and then it is definitely kind of my hit tune in a way, in a strange way. And I just get messages from people all the time who in their process of grieving have sung it, or have sung it in a recital and felt this deep connection to it, and people who've sung it in choruses. I actually have many times, like at choral conferences, as Jewish choral conferences, people come up to me and says, "Oh, you're that Gerald Cohen? You're the Psalm 23 guy?" So it's sort of like, fortunately I do still like the piece. It's not a piece that has but it always, Marcy Sharf was the name of the woman that I wrote it for, and so I still always, do think of Marcy all the time in connection with that piece. And of course,
What was she like?
she was a wonderful, lively, irreverent, really loving person who connected with people so much. And when I knew her, she had 3 young kids, and just the first synagogue I was at, I stayed there as a I didn't live in that town, so I stayed at people's homes. So I stayed at their home a lot and really got to be kind of a member of the family in a way. So really got to know her and her kids very well. So it was it was a deep connection. I'm still friends with her, with her husband and their family. So
Well, the piece sort of has a mournful quality. I guess that explains it, that it was in a
yeah.
memorial piece.
Well, Psalm 23 in the Jewish tradition is sung at funerals and memorial services a lot. And I think what people say is that it feels mournful, but not not morbid. That feels comforting, and so and I've sung it. I've of course sung it at so many. I've had so many of, like, my congregation where I've been for more than 30 years. My friends there say, "Okay, you're going to sing it at my funeral, right?" And I indeed have sung it at funerals of people that I've known for many years, and for my own mother, and so it's definitely been that piece. But it's also been it's been done by wonderful choirs, and done with orchestra, and done I've done instrumental arrangements for just 2 clarinets and piano, and just an arrangement for solo piano. So it sort of is in every possible version. And I love what Madrigalia did with it. Carrie's he took, because I had done an orchestration of it, and then I think he took it and arranged it for the particular instruments that you had there. So that was very cool, and you did a beautiful performance. So,
well, thank you. We loved singing it. We also sang your setting of Psalm 82, which is kind of a judgy psalm,
Yeah.
like sort of God on high, casting thunderbolts and issuing his opinions about the poor, the dealings of people on earth. Why did you choose the first few verses of that to set to music?
Yeah, that was an interesting thing, because in some ways I was assigned that rather than choosing it. The Cantors Assembly, which is the professional group of cantors that I've had, decided to. It's one of what's called the 7 Psalms of the week. Each day of the week has a psalm which is assigned, because what it used to be sung in the temple in temple days. And so we still sort of say, so this was the psalm. This is the psalm for, I should know, yeah, psalm for Tuesday. um, and so they had a different composer asked to write one for each day, and they said, okay, could you do the one for Tuesday? And I said, okay. And then I said, and so it was interesting, because it wasn't a psalm I necessarily would have chosen. Usually very much as text pulls it. But then when I started working on it, and it really feels, there's this call for it's not only God as a judge, but God as a judge in terms of social justice, in terms of um, have mercy on the poor, feed the poor, help the widow and the orphan, and that it's this big protest against injustice in the world. And so as I started working on it, it really connected to me very, very much, and I love it, because it's something which it pulled something a little different out of me than I might have normally written, having been assigned that text.
Well, both Psalm 23 and Psalm 82 certainly have, repercussions and implications for our lives these days, for sure.
Yeah. So the thing, of course, the interesting thing with this for Madrigalia's performance, and I really love your performance. That one he completely orchestrated. Carrie Ratcliffe did it, the orchestration. I mean, this was a piece which I wrote for solo voice and piano. I also had I did an instrumental arrangement, because it worked well, like for violin and piano, just as an instrumental piece. But he had the idea, he had the vision, which I had not thought of doing it for unison chorus, which is quite a very different sound in a way, and then of orchestrating it with percussion and stuff like that. And I sort of said, okay, go for it. And a little unsure what was going to come out. But then, we talked about it some as he worked on it. And then, of course, I heard what you did in the concert, and it was really cool. I mean, I don't think I've not yet had another choir do that version, but I think I might, have it done that way again, because it was really an interesting approach to the piece.
Oh, it was so compelling to sing. We loved it. How does being a singer yourself influence the way you write music?
A lot. The thing is, my original training was as a pianist. I really grew up as a pianist, pretty serious as a pianist. And so one interesting about me as a singer is I didn't really think of myself as a singer, other than as I sang in choirs a lot, both in high school and college, and then and I had been singing in synagogue since I was a kid, leading, just since my bar mitzvah, leading services. But I didn't think of myself as a primarily singer. And then I decided, okay, let me think about being a cantor, and started taking voice lessons. This was right after college, and so for many years, I thought of myself as a pianist who also happened to sing. And then, now I guess almost 40 years later, I guess I have to admit I am I'm a singer. I really, by now it's, why not? But certainly I always am singing everything that as I'm writing. I mean, I do write at the piano, and I do a lot of improvising and playing things through, but I'm always singing. I mean, whether they're actual vocal lines or not, I'm always singing them. So I think I very much think of almost everything I do as in terms of vocal lines, and really want to write things that are grateful for the singers to sing, that will be, some I think sometimes what I write is challenging for the singers, not so much these pieces, but some other things, but hopefully feels once they learn it is very natural and comes to the voice and feels grateful for the voice once they learn it. So that's, yeah, that's a key part of what I do. Oh no, I'm not hearing you now.
Sorry about that, Ricky.
Okay.
I know singers that complain about Beethoven because he just didn't get it, especially Beethoven's Ninth. It's just
Right,
so
right,
painful for sopranos, right?
right.
But then Verdi or Richard Strauss, people just love, or Brahms.
Right, right. No, there's definitely, and yeah, I'm not sure what it was with Beethoven, whether, just he had this vision. But I mean, certainly I know of, I mean, there are some composers who write for voice and don't quite know, and sort of think, oh, the range of the singer, oh, soprano goes up to A, therefore I can go up to, can stick about there as long as I want. And obviously you can't. Have to really think about the overall tessitura and breathing, and so that's fortunately something which, yes, is very much inside me now. And I think also the fact that I do sing, every week or more than every week in synagogue, and that I'm always, so always have, and the other thing about being a cantor is that it involves a lot of improvisation. That especially in sort of a traditional chants, you have sort of scales that you work with, and then you can improvise with them. So I'm always kind of composing on my feet, and in my voice as every week, and so that's really an important part as well for me of I think what unconsciously goes into everything I create as I write.
How important is the text to you?
Really important. Really important. Excuse me. Yeah, I really need to find, I mean, the thing is, if I have to, I can write a song on almost anything. if I have to, but really for me, finding a right text for a song, for a choral piece, and then, I mean, I've also, as you may know, I write opera as well. So whatever the sort of the scale of the pieces, that I really need to find a text that resonates with me, and it's not with for example with poems, it's not even sort of like, is this a great poem or something like that. It's more, does it somehow have an image which is so powerful, which then wants to translate itself into music, as well as, of course, the rhythm of the text as well. So for me, it's kind of the central images and also the structure, that there's a structure that kind of wants to turn itself into a song. So it's fascinating for me because I'm always looking at, books of poems and liturgical poems and things like that, thinking of what might be a good song. And they're just certain things that just jump out at you, and it's sometimes unexpected, which is kind of cool. You find something which there's just something about the image and the way that the rhythms of both the rhythms of the words and the rhythms of the overall poem that just says, I want to be made into music.
So the story of Sarah and Hagar, I know, has been the subject of one of your operas.
Right.
A beautiful love story set in a concentration camp.
Right. Yeah. So Sarah and Hagar, of course, is based on the biblical story of Abraham and his wife Sarah and the handmaid Hagar and their children Isaac and Ishmael, and it's really focusing on the roles of the women, because there's so much in these biblical stories that's left. They're told very tersely, and there's so much that's left unsaid. And of course, there's so much of the women's stories that's even more left unsaid in the biblical stories. So that I'm really, the idea that we had was to try to see what was really going on with Sarah, what was really going on with Hagar and their relationship, and how it, and how that then affected, biblical and Jewish and Jewish history throughout many, centuries after that, as well as connecting to the Jewish-Arab relationship and difficulties that last even until this day. The other opera, Steal a Pencil, for me is it's based on a true love story of people that I knew very well from my synagogue, Jaap and Ina Polak, who were survivors from Holland, from the Netherlands. And I had known about their story, and that they had met in a concentration camp and fallen in love there. And just I spoke to them when Jaap was in his late 90s and Ina in her late 80s, and said, I'd like to make an opera of your story. And they were kind of taken aback, and Jaap said, write it quickly. So I did, because we then did not a full production, but sort of the first presentation of it for his 100th birthday and her 90th birthday at my synagogue. And it was very, very moving, of course, to have them there. The first real, full production was done at Opera Colorado in 2018, and unfortunately, Jaap and Ina were no longer alive. But their daughter was there, and they were very much there in spirit. And that was pretty wonderful. We're now working on doing a studio recording of the opera. Of course, everything is kind of ground to a halt in the last year, but we're hoping to maybe record in 2022.
That's fantastic. It sounds like a beautiful love story. So going back to the terseness of the Old Testament, have you read the book God, a biography by Jack Miles? He's a Princeton theologian.
It's on my bookshelf here, and I've not actually read it.
So I think about that book a lot. He treats the Old Testament like a novel, like like Moby Dick, and if that's all you had, if that was your only knowledge of the deity, what could you say as a book of? Anyway, I think about it.
If the Bible was the only knowledge you had of the deity, or
yes, if you treated the Old Testament like you treated like the Scarlet Letter, or that's all you knew about those characters.
Yeah, well, I think I actually recently read another book by Jack Miles about sort of the history of the study of religion, and he does seem like a very interesting thinker. So now I would like to, I have all these books on the bookshelf. There's so many that I'm hoping to read. I'm
glad I'm not the only one.
Yes, no, absolutely not. But that's a whole other thing, is the God of the Hebrew Bible, and how that relates to how we think about God now. I mean, you could get me off on a whole other thing, because one thing I'll just mention is that at my synagogue, in the last year, with our not being able to be together, I started a theology class with people, just to talk about God in different ways. And we started as like a four meeting class, just meeting after services. And then when we went into lockdown, we just said, okay, let's keep meeting on Zoom. And we did it every week for about 6 months. And now we start again. And it's been wonderful, because it's talking about God in trying to explore the ways that people think about God, and sort of getting away from conventional ways of thinking about God to more unconventional ways, and which most people sort of felt, but were a little bit nervous about talking about it away. And by now we've gotten very, very open with each other, which has been lovely. It's been a really lovely time.
Wonderful. Well, hearing you talk about scouring books for potential settings for new songs reminds me very much of our own wonderful Carrie Ratcliffe, who is also extremely literary. And if you walk into his living room, there's just books everywhere, poetry, and especially poetry, but he's, always on the lookout for compelling verse and compelling prose that speaks to him in that way. It's almost like a magical thing.
Well, he and I should talk about that.
I hope you get a chance to when things get back to normal. Well, let me just ask you one more question, and that is, what are you working on now, aside from the important ministry at Temple? Are you
Right.
writing? Are you composing?
Yeah, I am. It's it's been a it's of course been a hard time because things which I was supposed to write for performances that were coming up didn't happen. One piece that I did write that was supposed to have its premiere like in April last year, we said, oh, we'll do it in January instead, and this last month, and then of course we're doing it then. So that was premiered as a virtual one of these virtual choirs where 8 cantors got together and from different parts of the country and thing, and that was exciting to have a premiere, of something, a real premiere, even though it was virtual. It was so that was pretty wonderful. I've actually taken the time, since there aren't concerts coming up. There are two main things I've been doing. One is rearranging some of my pieces for forces. I've both in terms of smaller forces because of that's what people need now. So for example, taking this set of songs which I wrote for 2 clarinets and piano, which are based on my songs, including Adonai, and arrange them for just solo piano, which was, I also arranged another choral piece for voice and piano. So I did a lot of rearranging of things. I'm also starting on a new opera, and that's in a very, very beginning times. And so I've been working with a librettist and writing a few scenes, and so it's I mean I can tell you it's about Mary Shelley and the creation of the novel Frankenstein, which, as you may know or may not, she wrote when she was 18, and she was living with her lover Percy Shelley, and so it's quite a story, actually, the creation of it. And so like I say, we've written a few, sketched out the plan and written a few scenes, and since the Mary Shelley's a mezzo, and both Percy and Victor Frankenstein are Percy Shelley and Victor Frankenstein are tenors. I happen to have 3 couples that I know, opera singers, who are mezzos and tenors. The 2 people. So they were. I got one of them the 2 of them to sing the scenes together because they actually could sing together, like most people could not. So yeah. So I'm at the beginning of a new opera, and doing some arrangements of things, and hoping to start on a new. Also, I guess another big thing is I am doing recording of some string quartets. I've written several pieces for the Cassatt String Quartet, and they have started playing together again, even though they don't have any concerts. But we've been planning to do a recording, so we're actually going in the studio in March and recording a piece of mine. So very excited about that. You're on mute again.
So that's fantastic. I know John Rutter did the same thing. He arranged a lot of his favorite choral pieces for the lonely pandemic pianist. And he doesn't call it that, but if you're stuck home with your piano and you love John Rutter,
yeah. No, it was actually gratifying to be doing something which was very creative, but it felt like it had an immediate, it wasn't going to be frustrating because it wasn't going to be performed. So,
exactly.
Right.
It was just wild. I have to tell you, right before the pandemic started, I was my husband and I went to London for our 30th wedding anniversary, and I went to a lecture at the National Portrait Gallery about Percy Shelley, and I sat in front of that portrait and listened to a half-hour lecture about his life and Mary. That's just wild.
Well, it's really
like the afternoon of small world experiences.
It is a really fascinating story, and again, you're asked about texts, so that's very much with operas. I mean, obviously the problem with an opera is that if you have an idea for an opera, you then have to work on it for years, and then you have to try to get produced. So it's not like writing a song or a choral piece. So it's much more of a commitment. But I'm always like, every time I read a book or watch a movie, it's like, oh, that could be an opera. That could be, that's sort of it. And but the Mary Shelley, when I read a little bit about her life, it really did. It's fascinating. By the way, her mom also has an amazing life, Mary Wollstonecraft, who died when Mary Shelley was born. So Mary, her daughter, never knew her, but she was one of the first real feminist philosophers, wrote The Vindication of the Rights of Women, went to France during the revolution from England in the midst of the terror to try to write about the revolution. She was so she's probably worth an opera too.
Next year,
Yeah, yeah,
when we have all this free time.
yeah.
Well, is there anything that you would like to talk about that I haven't asked you during this part?
Oh, I think
together?
I think we're pretty good. I'm just, of course, I am so clearly choral music is very, very central to what I do. And a group like Madrigalia, which is, amateur, but in the very best sense, people who are really good singers and love to sing and love to get together is one of the most important reasons I write choral music, because it's people who really care about singing together and doing a real quality, quality performances and making music in a very serious way, just because they love it so much. So that's one of the reasons I write choral music. So I just want to thank you and Madrigalia for being what you are, and hope that we can all get back to doing what we love to do soon.
Well, from your mouth, yeah, thank you so much for writing beautiful music for us to perform. Thank you.
Thank you.